Hello friends, and welcome back to 5 Agendas. We're just going to have a little bit of a review before we get into the Bible helps for this day's video presentation, but let's just ask for help and guidance. Our Father which art in heaven, we want to understand these things, and so we pray that by your Holy Spirit that the scales on our eyes will be removed and we can understand your present truths concerning your high priestly ministration, concerning our great high priest, the man and woman. Thank you for your word that makes these things clear and help our viewers to understand as we try to present these things as simply as we can. Teach us and guide us by that Spirit of truth. In Jesus' name we humbly pray. Amen. Okay. For the February 2019 thought paper, which was just recently, we presented in that thought paper titled, "Is it really important to know there is a ministration of Christ as our great high priest?" And we began by explaining to our readers two critical aspects. This one will be the first, regarding the everlasting gospel's dual atonement message that is summed up in the book of Hebrews. Now you'll recall that the first immutable thing, wherein God cannot lie, was about the necessity of the cross from Hebrews 8:3. But our focus is on the second immutable thing that has been forgotten, ignored, and is unknown. And that is the necessary cleansing, Hebrews 9:23. That aspect of cleansing in relation to the agendas of the final atonement that continues to the end of the age, from Hebrews 9:26 and Leviticus 16. Lest we forget and dismiss what was prophesied concerning Daniel 8:14. A cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary not made with hands had to commence once the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation had reached its fulfillment in Daniel 8:14. To deny a dual atonement is to advance an abomination of desolation. So in light of this ministration of Christ as our great high priest, whom we are told to consider, is Paul saying there is a continual abomination in the denial of a dual atonement? Have a look at Hebrews 6. So the 2 points are as follows. Observe carefully. If the atonement, reading from right here, had been finished on the cross, okay, there would never have been 1290 years of the little horn's transgression and abomination of desolation against Christ's daily atonement ministration. That was all post-Calvary. What that means is, if the atonement was finished here at the cross, there would never have been 1290 years for the little horn as a transgression, as abomination against that daily. That would not have happened from 554 unto 1844 in Daniel 8:14. And the very fact that there was an abomination, a transgression by the little horn, from here to 1844, for 1290 years, when the daily was taken away by that little horn, proves that that daily ministration was going on unto here, and so therefore it was not finished at the cross. The atonement finished on the cross is what the little horn wants us to believe. Hence the 1290 years of treading that truth of Christ daily down. Treading down that truth of Christ's daily atonement ministration down to the ground. So to subscribe to the atonement finished at the cross theory totally leaves us without a great high priest. In fact, the Bible proves otherwise, even that the 1290 years had to reach unto 1844. The time of then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. When it began, when that final atonement began. So here you see that the atonement was not finished at the cross, seeing that the little horn waged a huge war against the prince of the host. After Calvary, casting down the truth to the ground, known as the transgression and abomination that maketh desolate, from Daniel 8:13 and 12:11. This was all against Christ's daily, his antitypical high priestly ministration, which is known in the book of Daniel as the daily. And we're going to talk more about this here shortly. But for the second point, the everlasting gospel, age-long gospel in Revelation 14:6 means just what it says. A message that covers from the beginning of the age, when the first gospel promise was made to Adam and Eve. Remember in Genesis 3:15? And it goes to the consummation of the ages in Hebrews 9:26. In the end of the world, from the King James Version, and at the end of the age from the Revised Standard Version, when Christ's necessary cleansing is then finally complete. And that's when he puts away sin by the sacrifice of himself. With all the Bible evidence, the theory of an atonement finished at the cross comes crashing down to the ground. Now the interlinear explains, as we have here, gospel, everlasting, in the Greek, euangelion, ahenios, everlasting gospel, conveys just that. It is gospel everlasting, or age long. And from Young's, it's age lasting, from Revelation 14:6. The point is the very fact that it says it's age lasting, everlasting gospel, goes from the beginning of the age to the end of the age, is the everlasting gospel message for us now, which means that message is still in effect, as is his high priestly ministration, a dual atonement, the necessity and the necessary, two immutable things. Okay? This equals the age-long gospel message from the beginning of the age to the end of the age. That's from Hebrews 9:26 and Revelation 14:6, the proof. Yet, while Christ's necessary cleansing will be complete at the consummation of the ages, catch this, the subject matter relating to the everlasting gospel, friends, it never ceases. We will be studying it throughout the eternal ages. Then we will not be looking through a glass darkly, but face to face. 1 Corinthians 13:12. We will learn more of the two immutable things at Jesus' feet. How wonderful. And be glad that we had and continue to have a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So to say the atonement was finished on the cross is to basically say that that age-long gospel, that everlasting gospel, is not age-long or everlasting. Which leaves you again without a great high priest, without a gospel, if it was all finished at the cross. But God is trying to tell us something. And Revelation 14 is the only place where the expression everlasting gospel is found. It is purposeful because the book of Revelation was written for the end of the ages. And it's saying that everlasting gospel is still to be given to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. What can you say if you have it all just finished at the cross? No. As Hebrews 7:25 says, wherefore he is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth. He ever liveth right now to make intercession for them, for us. That is not saying the atonement was finished at the cross. He ever liveth to make intercession for us. This is God's central message that competes as a testimony against the seven-headed beast and the dragon. The message of Christ's end of the world, final atonement, is necessary in the context of the message from the book of Revelation. A cleansing ministration by the man in linen. It's all based on the everlasting gospel. And why Jesus said in John 4:22, salvation is of the Jews. That salvation that the Jews had in the sanctuary services, the sanctuary message, depicted a dual atonement. Salvation is of the Jews. Our great high priest must feature in every aspect of the everlasting gospel. And if it was all finished at the cross, why is he our great high priest? There's no reason. But the Bible says there is a necessary cleansing. There is a reason why we have a great high priest. And he is making intercession, which is Day of Atonement language. He ever liveth right now. And this is what he's doing now once. In the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. If we limit the atonement to the cross, we eliminate the cleansing ministration of the atonement of our great high priest, our only means of salvation from sin in sinful flesh. But here's the catch. We will claim to, but not worship he who made, if we say it was all finished at the cross. Fact is, Hebrews 9:26 was not limited to 31 AD. The atonement was not finished at the cross. But what was finished was his condemnation of sin in the flesh. Romans 8:3. This is what Jesus accomplished. John 19:28. And what was accomplished holds the same meaning as finished in John 19:30, as authenticated in Romans 8:3. The sanctuary services, the sacrifices, the type feasts, which feasts could not be kept without animal sacrifices, were also finished at the cross, with Christ as our real and final Passover lamb. 1 Corinthians 5:7. Now, with that, let's have a quick review of the difference here between the time of the end and the end of time. Okay? As we discussed in 2 videos prior to this one, video number 30. Remember this chart? So, here is the beginning of the time of the end. Here is the end of time. The time of the end and the end of time. The time of the end, and here's the second advent, the end of time. Because when we were looking at the Kazon from our chart here, remember the 3 texts? Daniel 8:14, for at the time of the end shall be the Kazon, the vision. For at the time of the end shall be the Kazon. Because it goes unto 1844. So, what Daniel was told, for at the time of the end, here, 1844, shall be the vision. For at the time of the end shall be the vision unto 1844. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, kazon, for it shall be for many days. Because it was going to be many days before it began, post 31 AD. Now, and from 10:14, now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days. Here, the beginning of the time of the end. For yet the vision, kazon, the time that it began, is for many days. And I hope that makes it more clear and simple. Now, this is going to be a good time for you to pause this video because we won't read through all this, but these are some texts about the end of the world. So pause right now and have a look at those because we're going to focus on these two texts right here. Okay, so now that you've paused and had a look at those, Matthew 24:14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. This gospel of the kingdom was preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So what are we talking about? Okay? From Luke 21:24, because this first part has to do with they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations, 70 AD. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, ta ethne, nations, until the times, the kairos, the probationary times of the Gentiles or nations be fulfilled. So this gospel of the kingdom was preached as a witness to all the nations. And then it says, and then shall the end come. It was preached. So here we are right here in this period of time with 1967 and 1980. When Jerusalem was no longer, when the Jews took possession of Jerusalem with the Six-Day War in June 1967, and then there was that brief period of time, that akrihu, that idiomatic expression there, until, in Luke 21:24, there was that brief period of time, and in 1980, when Jerusalem was declared the capital of Israel. Okay? So that gospel of the kingdom was preached as a witness to all the nations, and then shall the end come. Luke 21:24 was a sign of the end of time, which was covered in the manuscript The Hour and the End by the founding editor. Now, as we get back to here, Hebrews 9:26, which says, for then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world, but now once in the end of the world, that's where we are now, hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And that's what this is all about. This time, he is revealed as the Son of Man in the lives of those in whom the final atonement is accomplished. Right here, Christ in you, the hope of glory, Colossians 1:27. See, the gospel of the kingdom was witnessed to all the nations, and when the times of the nations were fulfilled, that sign was given for that we were in the time of the end, and then comes the end of time. Okay? So now that that's made a little more clear, we come to the August 2018 helps, which is, we're getting back to the daily. Okay? So, this is a timely summary of the little horn of Daniel 8:10-13, which is what we're going to cover here, and his casting down the truth to the ground. So, let's just notice, number A, first point. So it says concerning that little horn, the little horn waxed great, even to, or as the margin says, the margin here is in the brackets, it waxed great even to, or against the host of heaven. That's what the little horn did. So what we're trying to determine here is, again, what is the daily? It says the little horn waxed great even to or against the host of heaven. Okay? B. It cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. He, the little horn, magnified himself even to or against the prince of the host. Who's the prince of the host? Christ. Because it says it's the host of heaven, not anything down here on earth relating to paganism. He waxed great to or against the host of heaven. He cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground, stamped upon them. He magnified himself from 554 to 1844, even to or against the prince of the host. By him, that's the little horn, or as the margin says, or from him, that is the prince, the daily was taken away. So the little horn took away the daily, but it was from the prince of the host that the daily was taken away. Okay? The place of his sanctuary was cast down. Whose sanctuary? It can only ever be the prince of the host, which is the host of heaven. We're just pulling the pieces together and see how it all lines up, and only points to one thing regarding the daily. The place of his sanctuary was cast down. Whose sanctuary? Again, the prince of the host, which is the host of heaven. And an host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression. But if you have a look at the margin, or the host was given over for the transgression against the daily. That host that was cast down, the prince of the host that was the little horn magnified himself against, that host was given over for that terrible transgression and abomination of desolation for 1290 years. And an host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression. It cast down the truth to the ground. The truth of the daily. It practiced. That little horn practiced, prospered the transgression of, or making desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. That transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary, and Christ's sanctuary, his high priestly ministration, and the host to be trodden underfoot. Okay, so is this paganism? Or does it concern the host of heaven? The prince of the host? His sanctuary? The daily being taken away? From the prince of the host, by the little horn. The marginal note for Daniel 8:11 is very interesting due to the fact that it is saying the daily is being taken away from the prince of the host. Okay? How could paganism be taken away from Christ? Would this not be relating paganism to Christ? Impossible. Now, carefully notice that this daily, the Tamid, here in Daniel 8 and 12, because it's linked, taken away by the little horn. That daily is taken away by reason of transgression. How? By transgression. By who? The little horn. Against whom? The prince of the host. And it's called the transgression of desolation in 8:13. It's the exact same thing in 12:11. It's called the abomination that maketh desolate. It's a transgression, it's an abomination that brings about a desolation. Desolate. Christ's high priestly ministration. Taken away. It was not understood. It was removed from the minds of man. And that went on for a very long time. 1290 years to be exact. Okay? Because, remember the question, admite, until when concerning the vision, concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation? Until when? He says, unto 2,300 days. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. We know this is 1844. And from Daniel 12:11, we have it saying that we know it terminates here. 1290 counting back to 554. And this is why the daily taken away implies the daily was obscured in the minds of men. That daily was taken away by the little horn. It was taken away from the prince of the host. And that little horn practiced and prospered for 1290 years. This is the only thing that makes sense. Paganism? I don't think so. Okay? Taken away by reason of. It's the same thing in 8:13 and 12:11 because it's talking about what links these two texts is the daily. Admite until when concerning this? Unto 1844. From the time that the abomination maketh desolate set up, there was to be 1290. When you know it ends here, and it only goes, it goes unto 1844, all you have to do is again count back, and you have the starting date for this, and you know what the daily is, by what reason, and that it was against the prince of the host. So, if we try to say that the daily is paganism, where does paganism fit into any of this? This is why it doesn't and cannot ever. The host of heaven? The prince of the host? Paganism? His sanctuary and the truth? Doesn't work. But if we know that the little horn's transgression and abomination of desolation was against the host of heaven, yes, the prince of the host, the man in linen, Christ, our great high priest. And that daily is Christ's high priestly ministration that was taken away for 1290 years. It's his sanctuary, and that daily is the truth. This is why Christ's high priestly ministration in the heavenly sanctuary is present truth, friends. When one continues to denigrate it and say that that's paganism, the little horn even now has that daily obscured in our minds. So here, right here, because we had a discussion with a family member that we asked, what was the daily? Okay? And we asked them, what was the daily? And they told us that it was Christ's high priestly ministration. So we were, okay, great. Because we wanted to share what the man in linen was saying. And a little while later they came back and said, wait a minute. I was wrong. The daily is paganism. So what ensued was a lengthy, long correspondence back and forth that was a blessing because we got to learn more in how to prove that the daily is Christ's high priestly ministration. We started sharing all the evidence. But what was interesting was it wasn't sinking in, and we were just going back and forth and we weren't getting anywhere until we presented these pictures that I have up here on the screen with some short commentary which says that, because we put these little banners here so we could read it and try and make sense of it. Daniel 8:12, and an host was given him against the daily, paganism, by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth, paganism, to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. So if the daily is paganism, and it was, a host was given him against paganism by reason of transgression, and it cast down that daily, the truth, as being paganism, to the ground, practiced and prospered, it makes absolutely no sense. So we shared how, if you say that the daily is paganism, then since the truth that was cast down to the ground, the truth must therefore be paganism, right? We asked this individual. Oh no. This is no doubt you will strongly reject. I do. This is why the concept of paganism in numerous ways does not fit the correct interpretation of the word, but is rather a private interpretation, which is why the Bible rejects this concept. Which is why the Bible is saying that the little horn taking away of the daily is against the prince of the host, which is not the prince of paganism, but is the prince of the host of heaven. Daniel 8:10. However, reread, see picture 2, which was this. Daniel 8:12, corrected, and an host was given him against Christ's high priestly ministration. That daily, that antitypical daily, Tamid, that Christ was doing in the heavenly sanctuary, ministering for us, that was taken away. It was against that daily by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth of Christ's high priestly ministration to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. This is the truth that was cast down to the ground, the daily, in Daniel 8:11 and 12:11. The sanctuary were the high priestly ministration of Christ. The daily ministration that the type in Leviticus 4 reveals Christ doing prior to the yearly, that antitypical yearly Day of Atonement ministration, typified in Leviticus 16, which commenced in 1844, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. This is rightly dividing the word of truth. Now let's look at the next text. From Daniel 8:13. See, what we've looked at is just Daniel 8:12, and seeing if this fits, which it doesn't, and seeing if this fits, which it does. So the next verse, we're going to do the same thing. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, Palmoni, a wonderful number, Admite, until when shall be the vision concerning the daily, paganism, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot. Until when shall be the vision concerning paganism? Furthermore, since the another saint asked, how long, admite, or until when, shall be the vision concerning the daily, paganism, then when the answer came from Palmoni, unto 2,300 days, we must therefore understand that paganism would last until 1844. But yet I understood that you believe, along with many others, that paganism was taken away in 508. We told this individual. Just doesn't make sense. However, it was Justinian, as the Holy Roman Emperor, who routed paganism post 508. So, if this daily is paganism, And the man in linen says that, in answer to the question, Admete until when, that it goes until 1844. How can it be paganism? Because they have, in Laodicea, it's understood that the daily was taken away in 508, which nowhere comes close to it arriving in 1844 via the 1290 years. So it just simply doesn't make sense. This, however, does make sense. He says, "Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, Until when, Admete, shall be the vision concerning the high priestly ministration and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot?" And he says that the vision concerning Christ's high priestly ministration and the transgression of desolation against it, unto 2,300 days or years, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. The daily goes from post 31 AD. It gets taken away from 554 to 1844. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Then the antitypical yearly begins. His high priestly ministration, a necessary cleansing of heavenly things and also a people. So that's so important, and that's what we've presented for you today to think about. And this is why it is really important to know there is a ministration of Christ as our great high priest. So continue watching with the next videos. We've got a lot more to share, but I just wanted to clarify this, how that the daily is not paganism. It's Christ's high priestly ministration. And when we presented these pictures to the individual came back and said, well, it must be something else. Sadly, still not wanting to recognize and accept the truth that the daily is Christ's high priestly ministration, just ended with well, it must be something else. So, thank you for watching. God bless.